Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show at SFU Radio. My name is Roger Grenels, and we have a special guest. His name is Peter Tingling. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Um, I'm a professor at SFU in the business school. I'm interested in decision making. I'm about 10 years living in Vancouver. Before that, I was living in Toronto, and of course, I was born in England. And so the sports I watched growing up and played, of course, was soccer and cricket. So I didn't know anything about hockey until I came to Canada, and I can't skate.
Excellent. Well, we are going to skate forward in this excellent interview. Now, we're going to talk about the NHL draft. The NFL is different, right?
Sure, yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the NFL draft. This will be held in New Jersey this weekend. The Colorado Avalanche was the bottom team at the end of the season, and now they have the advantage to get top junior players. A junior player that makes the NHL has a lot to learn. Playing time is very important for their development and to grow up as a player. Some do adapt fast, some of them struggle. What do you think are some of the difficulties rookies experience when they get into this professional level?
Well, I think that it's funny because you mentioned the NFL in the beginning. The NHL is kind of unique in that people are expected to make a contribution a lot faster. And, as an 18-year-old playing what is essentially an adult or a man's game, it's very, very physical. It's fundamentally different. I mean, it's like night and day. It's funny being here at the university. I'm sure, some of the students here would appreciate the difference coming from high school to university. I would imagine is very, very similar in the NHL. It's just a huge quantum change. And some people are able to do it. There's a number of people who make the transition in 1 year, but in many cases it takes a number of years and a lot more development. And this is where teams like Detroit, for example, that have a history of bringing players in, because it's not just a question of drafting well, right? It's a question of developing, right? So, developing players and having a farm team that you can develop them, you can get them used to the culture, you can groom their skills, you can develop them. That's really the difference, I think.
You talked about Detroit. I remember back in 1992, 1993, I was in Lethbridge, Alberta. I graduated from high school with Jamie Pusher. Jamie Pusher was a hockey player who played in the Western Hockey League with the Lethbridge Hurricanes. He got drafted, in fact, by the Detroit Red Wings in '93. He got the Stanley Cup with them. And I remember there was one time that I called his dad in Lethbridge, and I asked him, how is Jamie doing? And he was telling me, he is struggling a lot because he says, man, these guys are really men. They're very tough. They're very physical. And obviously, a guy like him, 6'3", a defender, he got to learn, and he had to go through all these pressures and troubles, and he got actually drafted later on to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. Went to Dallas, Atlanta. He played with Mary Lemieux. So this is very, very important. This was a very, very important subject. Now, the majority of the players that are playing junior hockey, like in the Western Hockey League, Quebec League, Manitoba League, most of them are Canadians. At this time, one prospect is Seth Jones. He's a tough defender. He's an American who plays with the Portland Winterhawks in the Western Hockey League. Thank you. And it looks like this market for hockey players is hitting more on the Canadian side, knowing that hockey is the most popular here in Canada.
Well, you've asked a number of questions there. You're making a number of important points. Certainly in Canada, we think hockey is important. It's hard to have a day go by when you don't see something in the newspapers about hockey, even during the off-season. You got to keep in mind, though, that among the four leagues, hockey is a distant fourth, right? And in the United States, it's far less important. So it's not a surprise that the majority of professional players are North American, particularly given the style of hockey that we play here in North America. Having said that, my expertise really is on the decision-making side, and this touches upon something else that you've talked about, which is all of the different leagues that they get drafted from. And in my work, what I find is that obviously where you come from makes a difference, but also the team that drafts you makes a difference. So, my research tends to suggest that in many cases it's more important who drafts you than when you are drafted, because historically, we've always looked at draft order as being the most important thing. I would argue that draft order is still important if you're one of the top 10 or top 20, perhaps even the top 30. But as you get dropped further and further down in the draft tables, it's more important who has actually drafted you.
Thank you, Peter. On this draft, as we mentioned, a lot of players are from Canada, but there's also a couple of players from Finland, four players from Russia, and now it looks like the European market is aiming for players from Switzerland in the NHL. In this case, we have a player called Mirko Müller, who plays in the Western Hockey League with Everett. It looks like this brings future opportunities to other players, and it opens the doors to European players to come to develop better in Canada and in the US and the NHL.
I think that if you are, in the hockey world, I don't think it gets much higher than the NHL, and certainly that would be the dream for many, many people. I think that the one thing I would, not to quibble, but I think the one thing that is open for discussion is whether it's better. It's a different style of hockey, certainly. I think it depends on, what your objectives are and what your skill level is. I would think that for many, many people, the ultimate is either to play in the Olympics or to play in the NHL. And, fortunately, hopefully, players will be able to do both.
Thank you, Peter. In this first round of the draw, we're going to talk a little bit about the Vancouver Canucks. This is our city and our team. The Vancouver Canucks will be picking players in position number 24 in this first draft. The Canucks will be followed by Montreal and Anaheim. So what are the possibilities for the Canucks to obtain a rookie who may be a forward? Because to me, in my opinion, they have very good defenders. They have an excellent squad, but the productivity is in the attacking area. They need to score more goals and be more consistent and solid. What do you think about that?
I have no idea. I will tell you that it's extremely difficult to look at 18-year-olds and pick. And when you're drafting late, it's very, very hard. It's very, very difficult. I mean, there's so much energy and attention gets placed on the first ones. I think my research tends to suggest that in the first round of the draft, you basically hope that you are not unlucky. Which is to say that the vast majority, we're talking about very, very elite athletes, that's, just to be sure, right? All 210 of the people on the Central Scouting list and the Europeans and all that, these are very, very elite athletes. I should be so lucky to have that level of skill. However, having said that, the fact of the matter is that the vast majority are never going to play a single game in the NHL. Less than 40% of the people who are drafted actually play a single game in the NHL, and only 20% of the people who are drafted have a career in the NHL. So the vast majority of them are never going to play in the NHL. Having said that, they may still have good careers and have tremendous opportunities elsewhere. If you look at the first round of the draft, about 85% of the first 10 have careers in the NHL, about 65% of the first round overall. So basically, you want to pick somebody who's not one of those 35%. Now, when you look at the rounds 2 to 3, and when you look at rounds 4 through 7, the drop-off is even more fierce. On average, approximately 12% of people who drafted in the later rounds have a career in the NHL, and 88% don't. So you want to make sure that you pick, if you can, you pick one of those 12%. So this is where the scouts have a tremendous opportunity to gather lots of information, whether it's from the combine, whether it's from seeing them play, and so on. And this is where you really want to, hopefully, tap that information and be able to make a good choice.
A part of the information as well, it looks like the Philadelphia Flyers will be looking to make their defense a little bit solid. They want to get Scott Laughton and Nick Cousin. He's a great player in the AHL. Now, for the students here at SFU and everybody in our audience, has there ever been a student from SFU making the NHL?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I should know the answer to that one in some ways as an SFU professor. Unfortunately, I don't. It's kind of funny because in my research, I really focus not on statistics because this is not Moneyball, right? I mean, I don't think that some of the very simplistic ideas of Moneyball apply quite to hockey. But, in my work, what I do is I look at the output. I look at how often the athletes that are drafted by general managers, drafted by teams, make it in the NHL. And, I look at how many games they actually play. So I really get the opportunity to actually look at the background of the players. And, to be perfectly frank, in many times, I think I know who the top 3 or 4 names that are talked about in this draft are. But beyond that, I couldn't even tell you who's up for draft. I actually recognize more managers and coaches and GMs and owners than I do players.
And last recommendation for all the students, junior high, high school, a lot of them, they're curious. They want to become professional athletes. They want to make money. But there's a very important thing here. You have to have a career, not just a career in hockey or sports. That is a very short career. Because if you get into the NHL or any professional level and you get injured and you're not coming back, you could struggle if you have no career. So my suggestion to all of them is get your education going in college, university.
Well, what I would say is that professional sports, more and more, it reflects what we would probably call the Hollywood model, which is that there's a number of people, the Brad Pitts, the Arnold Schwarzeneggers of the world, that can take $20 million a picture, and Hollywood is actually populated by I think the average income of a actor is in the low 20s. So it's very, very hard. If you're successful, if you make it to the NHL and you have a successful career, if you're the Boris Galovs and the Sidney Crosbys, you're making lots and lots of money. But getting there is actually tough. And so from that perspective, it's good to have a backup plan if you can. And even, for example, working in sports management, the fact of the matter is that there's more people than there are jobs. And so the competition is incredibly fierce.
Thank you very much, Peter. I really appreciate your time and welcome anytime to SFU in our studios. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Roger Reynolds. See you next time. Bye for now.